welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages. We're here once again to talk about McNairy County, Tennessee's Sheriff Buford Pusser. Now, I will warn you before we get into this episode that it's been a heck of a time. We've had hard drives that crashed, internet connections that were just terrible, and we also had to do a lot of editing to cut out a bunch of just freeze frames. So be aware of that. But we do have a special guest. We have Continental Ohio Chief of Police and fellow researcher Arnie Hardy that's going to be with us. So, Arnie, how are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing really good. You've been at this a long time, just like I have, researching the Pusser story. I was wondering, how did you really get into this anyway?
Probably from the Walking Tall movies. I mean, it came out in '73, which made me only 10, so obviously I didn't watch it when it first came out. But around here, we had TBS when it first started, and we all know how TBS started. It was with Walking Tall, Andy Griffith, and the Atlanta Braves. So you watched that all the time. The movie was on all the time. And when I got married, we went to South Carolina to Myrtle Beach, and we ended up by going to Buford Pusser's museum when it first opened. So we drove all the way from Myrtle Beach to Adamsville, Tennessee, which is almost like an 8-hour drive. And obviously my wife wasn't real happy about that, but that's where we went. So that's when I really started getting involved in when the museum first opened and went to the museum.
I think you and I approached it from a different way than most people do. For instance, I was having a law enforcement background. I was always interested in the facts. I didn't look at it as a fan like a lot of people did. Originally, I started out that way, but the facts kind of pushed me to looking at the real story. How about you?
Yeah, you knew the story of the Walking Tall movie. Your normal person knows that all can't be true, but I actually got hooked up with some people on Instant Messenger back in the day, and got to talking to them, and I went down to show my age there a little bit with Instant Messenger, huh? But I went down to Corinth and met some people, and then we ended up by going to Selmer and met some people, and I'm still in contact with the ones that are still alive. So it's been a while.
You and I got into it the
probably 30
same way.
years.
Some of those instant messages and Yahoo groups. At any rate,
Yeah.
what was the first thing that really caught your attention that made you think that the story that Walking Tall told is not true?
Well, me looking at looking at his face, they say his jaw got blown off and, his teeth were gone, and seeing pictures of him after his surgeries, his teeth were still there. The scar wasn't that big. So obviously that story got big as the years went on. So that kind of tweaked my, I don't know, whatever, like this story
Curiosity.
can't all be true. I like to look into it. So, and then meeting with the people was great down there, living in the South back in the day.
All right. Well, that kind of brings us up to the discussion today, and that's in the what all took place in the hours just prior to the alleged ambush. At any rate, I might start off by saying that, of course, I visited with Lavon Plunk, and I didn't know about her until I found this article that was written that said Buford Pusser legend is a hoax. And in that article, it mentioned Dennis Hathcock by name, but it mentioned a lady that was there at the house that had taken Pauline home, and what she heard. And I didn't know who it was for several years. And then when I was down there one trip visiting, I learned that it was Lavon. I got on the phone, interviewed her, and in my little mini series that I'm doing with interviews I've done, I intend to put some of that out here before long. But at any rate, she said she heard a gunshot after she dropped Pauline off at the house. Said that Pauline She had taken Pauline home, and she was supposed to wait on Pauline to get some things and the kids, bring them out to the car. And Pauline invited her in the house, and she didn't want to go because she was afraid Buford might come home, and she was afraid of Buford. So she told me she parked down the street a little ways, was waiting there, and Buford passed by and went in the house. A short time later, she heard a shot. She had no idea what it was about. She didn't know what to do because, of course, uh, she didn't feel like she could go up and get involved in whatever they were involved in. And then she couldn't call the sheriff's office because Carl was working and he was going to be the one that would answer the telephone. She couldn't call her husband, Petey, because she told me she was afraid that he would lie to cover up for Buford if something had gone on. And so she was sitting in there in a little bit of a quandary, wondering what was going to happen. And about that time, Petey called and said, well, Pauline was just killed in an ambushment for Buford. And I mean, kind of an interesting story that she told. You have any thoughts on it?
Uh, Actually, I heard your interview. I don't know if you remember sending that to me quite a long time ago when you first did that interview. You sent me it to me, and I thought
That's
that was a
right, I
very
did. I forgot about that.
interesting interview. And yeah, it's me and you've been exchanging information over the years. I mean, you do
It's
more
been
than I,
20
but whatever
years.
I get, I send to you. But yet, what do I do with that information? There's nobody to tell, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Now I understand that you actually got to ask Diane about her story.
Well, actually, it wasn't even, I didn't even really ask her. I got to know Dewana, them lead up to telling about Diane, going down to the festival and getting to meet people. And I met some business people that lived in Selmer, and they knew Dewana really well. And that's when I go down to the festival or go down whenever I went down, and I'd meet with them, and we meet with Dewana. So I got to know Dewana over the years. And they had a restaurant, Pusser's Restaurant in Adamsville. So we went out to eat there one night, and I was informed where if Diane is working there, I mean, I just knew Diane's name. I didn't know her personally, never met her. If don't show her too much attention because Dewana might get mad, because if anybody knows Dewana, she was all about her and nobody else, so to speak. So we're sitting at the table eating, and there was people coming and going, and people were talking to Dewana, and they're talking to this other couple we're with, and this guy that I went down there with. We're just sitting there, just listening, talk conversation. So I excused myself and I went to the restroom. I came out. To back up a little bit, Diane came to the table and was talking to Dewana, and Dewana introduced her to us. And I stood up and I said, "Glad to meet you. I've seen a picture of you in the books, heard your name in the book, connected with Buford, but it's nice to meet you." And that was pretty much the end of the conversation. She went back to the kitchen. So as I was coming out of the restroom, Diane was standing in the hallway, and I just went up to her and I said, "I'm really sorry about your past, what happened when you were a child. No child needs to live through that. I just feel really bad for you and your family." And she looked at me with her eyes, she didn't said, "Who do you think killed my mom?" And I said, "Buford did." And she grabbed my forearm and said, "Let me tell you a story." I was home that night when Buford came to the house. My mom and I were packing up to leave, and Buford came in, and I went in my bedroom. He didn't know I was there. I don't think I know he was there. And they got in an argument, and they were screaming and yelling, and she crawled underneath the bed. She said she heard a pop, and then it was quiet, and then she heard the front door close, and she looked out the window, and Buford was carrying Pauline to the car, put her in the front seat of the car. He turned around, and she thought he was coming back in for her, and she climbed underneath the bed, but he never came back in the house. And then they left. That's the last time she saw her mom alive.
Huh.
That's what she told me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was really surprised she told me that. I didn't know what to.
Just
Who was I
volunteer.
going to tell that to? Yeah, just volunteered it.
Well,
I mean, she knew me.
You take what Lavon had to say, you tie it with what she had to say. Did she tell you anything about seeing him pick up the shoes and take them back to the car?
No, I didn't ask her any questions. She told me
Okay.
that, and she looked at me, and then she turned around and walked away. And I was like, "What do I do with this information?" That's back in the mid 2000s, because she died in 2010.
Yeah.
And back then, it's me and you've been exchanging information over the years. I mean, you do
It's
more
been
than I,
20
but whatever
years.
I get, I send to you. but yet, what do I do with that information? There's nobody to tell, really.
Right.
Yeah.
That brings us up to Ward Moore. Now, Ward, when I interviewed him, I talked to him 2 or 3 times. First time was with Randy McFall, who unfortunately has passed away. But he and I had Ward on the phone one night. And Ward was telling us about, he got a call from Carl Pusser, Buford's dad. He was at the sheriff's office that night and told Ward, you've got to get over to Buford and Pauline's, as they're in the middle of a big fight and they're about to kill each other. And to go on with that, I guess, he said that he went over to Adamsville, but by the time he got there, Buford and Pauline were both gone. When he gets there, they're both gone. And he did say that while he was there that he saw droplets of blood on the carpet. Now, we're not talking about blood spatter like from a gunshot wound. The difference for most people who aren't aware, it's a droplet of blood is like if you had a bloodied nose or bloodied lip and it happened to fall straight down and land on the carpet, as opposed to blood spatter, which is dynamic the way it spreads out. And spatter always tells you a lot about trajectory. It tells you about distance, a lot of things. And that was not there at the house. And so, he told this story, and it really catches your attention because it just kind of weaves in with what Lavon and had to say, as well as what Diane had to say. And here you've got 3 different people telling about their interactions with that night with the crime scene there at the house. And what gets me is when you tell people these things, they still want to see Buford as a big hero. And I'm not sure, to me, that tells me, all these things tells me that Buford's story wasn't quite right that he was telling people.
Correct. Also, on that, I didn't have knowledge, and I'm not sure if it was public knowledge at that time, that Buford and Pauline were separated at the time. And she was basically going back to the house that night to get more clothes. From my understanding, they weren't really even living there anymore. So, and when Diane was telling me this, I wasn't aware of them being separated. I wasn't aware of that. I only found out that years later.
And when I interviewed Dr. Jerry Francisco, he told me that Warren Jones had talked to him about the fact that the Pussers were having marital problems and were separated. So, all this kind of plays into the ambush. I mean, you take from the time that Dennis and Johnny quit following him, Buford, that night, then here you have 3 more people that just follow that very closely behind what they did. And then the ambush is supposed to have happened at 4:45 in the morning. Now, you've got some time in there that's not filled in. We don't know what happened during, 2 hours, basically. And that's the reason that we're trying to piece all this back together now. I don't think the ambush happened the way that Buford claimed. As a matter of fact, you were there, you, me, Dennis, and Terry Swindle tried to reconstruct the that. We didn't know how fast Buford was going, so I set cruise control about 45, 50 miles an hour, and they were in a Cadillac, tried to chase me down from behind the church, and it wasn't even close.
Nope. Yeah, I was in, Dennis actually had a Cadillac, right?
Yeah, he was driving the Cadillac.
And you were in your car. Dennis was in his Cadillac, and I was with him, and he was on the gas trying to catch you. You're going 55. He never caught you.
Yeah, Terry Swindle
Not at the end was started on.
Terry apologized about, he said, I'm an old Hollywood cameraman. And he said, I've been on a lot of sets, made a lot of movies. And he said, I know the cameraman is never supposed to speak. But he said, Dennis was trying so hard to catch you that at one time I thought we were going to leave the road. And he said, if you listen closely, you're going to hear me say, watch it, watch it, watch it. Because he said, I thought we were about to go off the road. And, from what I understand, probably shouldn't say this publicly, but uh, they were going over 90 miles an hour trying to catch me. And it was only 7/10 of a mile from the church to the first ambush site. So I don't see how on earth Buford thought everybody would buy the story that uh, this car chased him down at 4:45 in the morning with no headlights, because we did it about what, 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning
Yeah.
in full
Yeah.
sunlight, and we couldn't make it work. So,
Yeah.
that was just another thing that just really made me, uh, got me concerned about how Buford's story just didn't work. Uh, there's so much that we know now that we didn't know then. It's really kind of gets you. And next week I'm going to have Dennis back. He's going to be talking about what happened the next morning, because it was early yet when Johnny Harrison called him and told him that there had been in the ambush and Pauline had been killed. And he's going to talk about what all he did that morning. Went over there, found shell casings. And something I should say, I had a lady that was going to be on here with us today. And, her husband has COVID. She couldn't be here. But she had relatives that lived in about the only house out there between the two ambush sites. And she was telling me about how that they heard shots that morning, and how none of it made sense to them whenever they heard the story that because Buford's was the only car that they saw.
No.
Do you have any more thoughts about any of this before we get off?
I sent you a email a day or so ago, and I found this very interesting, because when I get a minute, you get online and you try to look for things. You got to dig deep. It was the Banner out of McKinsey, Tennessee, as a newspaper or something, where Warren Jones is talking to a group of law enforcement officers in September of '68, and he's saying Buford said he never got out of the car. And Warren Jones tells his group, yes, he did get out of his car, because his blood's on the hood, his blood's on the fender, his handprints on the car. He got out of the car, but Buford still denied getting out of the car. And
Yeah,
Warren Jones is telling a group of law enforcement this.
yeah, and what I find interesting
So
about that,
who's telling the truth there? That's why I wonder.
yeah, what I find interesting about that is that there's blood spatter all over the car. It's on the hood, on the outside of the windshield. It was on the bumper. All the way back to the trunk. Now, if Buford and Pauline were sitting inside the car like Buford claimed, you wouldn't have blood all over the place like that. I suspect that someone, at least one, was shot out in front of the car. When you look at the spatter, the way it indicates that somebody was shot standing in front of that car. Now, I don't know if it was Pauline that was shot. I don't know if it was Buford that, possibly shot himself to make it look like a real ambush. But at any rate, let's just say that one of them or both of them were outside the car when they got shot. Buford would have blood on his hands whenever he tried to put Pauline back in the car. And that would explain why there's handprints out there on the outside of the car. And
Correct.
it contradicts, of course, his story that he and Pauline, neither one of them ever got out of the vehicle. So
Yeah, I'm sure, I don't know, and he's a big man. Obviously, he was 6'6", 250. He's a big man. If he was in the car, how they missed him and only hit her. I find that in the first shooting, he didn't get hit the first time, the first attack.
yeah, and I might add something along the line that there is a fictional book about Buford out right now, and they claim that a BAR was used in the ambush. And in all my research, the only thing that I find that the TBI commented on was an M1 carbine. And I don't know if they were just doing like they did with Walking Tall and trying to juice the movie up or the book up a little bit by saying it was a BAR, but there's no evidence that it was. And even the TBI's own experts, insisted that it was a M1 carbine.
What Warren Jones told a group of law enforcement, it was a 1918A Browning rifle. It was used. They located 27 casings along the road on each site, a total of 27 casings, which, I don't know how this guy got his information. I actually emailed him, and I'm waiting for an email back from him to get some more information from this guy. So I'm like you. Once you get information, you just keep digging. You just keep digging.
That's all you can do. And I missed out. Where did you say you got this information that it could have been a BAR?
It's in that report on the Banner, the McKinsey newspaper.
Yeah.
That Jones reported this to the law enforcement. That's what he reported that was used. That's the shell casings that they found. I guess I don't know if he's saying it's used, but that's the shell casing they found, what belongs to a 1918A Browning rifle. I mean, they could have just been there. I mean, there was all kinds of shell casing. There was rusted ones, there was old ones, new ones. There was just all kinds of shell casings along that road for some reason. I mean, I don't know why, but
in all the documents that I've seen and newspaper reports, it always identifies it as a M1 carbine. So I don't know how they get that. We're about to run out of time here.
Yeah, I don't know,
but Arnie, I do appreciate you being here today. And
thanks for having me on.
We're going to have to do this again before long.
Yeah, I don't get to see you very often.
Well, I'm going to be over that
12, 13 hours away from each other.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's 450 miles for me over there, and probably about the same distance for you.
Yeah, well, mine's like a 12-hour trip.
Oh, yours is longer
to get to you.
But I'm going to be over there before long.
And I just want to mention. Can I mention a few names that they're past, but there are people that were connected during this time that I talked to over the years.
Because we're about to run out of time on this.
Okay. Barbara Bivens, Bill McPeters, which you know both those people. Johnny Bunch. I don't know if you knew Johnny.
Absolutely.
Junior and Shirley, you knew.
Yeah.
And Stan Barker. I don't know if you ever met Stan Barker. Did you ever meet Stan?
Spoke with him several times.
Okay, nice guy. Yeah, and he's a lot of knowledge. He had a lot of knowledge of what's going on because he was friends with Towhead White.
Yeah.
So he knew a few things going on.
Yeah. And
those are all good people.
And they tell a story that's just totally opposite of what Buford would tell. And the thing is, you can find information to back their side of the story up.
Yeah. The thing with Junior was when Buford would confiscate any liquor of anything, he took the Junior, and Junior sold out of the bar, and they split it 50-50. People don't know that either.
Yeah. Like I say, there's so much that people don't know. It's kind of like Buford was supposed to have owned a club out on Airport Road there in Silmer, had it under somebody else's name. But that's another subject for another day. We're going to have to get off here. We're running out of time. So, again, I appreciate you being here.
I appreciate it, Mike. Have a good day.
All right. There you have it, folks. 3 different stories from 3 different people, all who had their own interactions in the story that morning. These were people that were not affiliated with each other, so it's very difficult for me to imagine how that they could get their stories to all knit together so well. And it's even more difficult for me to understand why that so many people just want to continue to see Buford as nothing but a hero. At any rate, I hope you join us next week because we're going to have Dennis Hathcock. He's going to do a follow-up on a story about what he and Johnny Harrison did the morning of the ambush, finding the shell casings there on New Hope Road, the fact that they interacted with law enforcement officers from both the local departments and the TBI. So until then, I would remind you to please be sure and leave your comments here on the page so that we can get an idea about what everybody's thoughts are. Until next week, have a good one.